Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today looks like such a bright day, so I'm hoping you can just turn to your neighbor and tell them it's day 2 of USAID's Kenya Investment Mechanism learning event. Are you going to try and say that to the person sitting next to you just to know them a little bit? I can't hear the room at all. I'd like to hear a few voices to show how energetic we are today. Are there any voices that I can hear? Okay, sounds good. So welcome to day 2 of the 2022 Kenya Investment Mechanism Learning Event by USAID. And we shall really be starting today's program to just demystify content for day 2 and explore what will be happening today. And my name is Luriti Gusuk. I have been with you since yesterday. And again, get familiar with the voice because we'll be taking a lot of questions from the audience, engaging with our panelists, engaging with our keynote speakers, and getting to understand the whole idea of access and impact, transforming financial markets for shared prosperity. So for now, to take us through a quick recap of some lessons that we were able to gain yesterday and what we should really expect today, esteemed guests, help me welcome Mr. Kevin Randiek from Brand K Communications, and that is our lead facilitator. Kevin, I think you can take the stage and take it away. Guys, a round of applause. The room is so dull.
All right, hi. Once again, good morning. Interestingly, the sun is coming out today and we look not warmed up, we look a bit cold. So can I just hear a whole room saying, good morning once again? Can I see your hands in the air? All right, can I just have your attention? All right, thank you very much. My name is Kevin Randiek. Welcome to day 2 of the Kenya Investment Mechanism Learning Event, year 2022, themed Access and Impact. I was really fascinated yesterday in terms of how our chief guest for the day ended up really taking access and impact, linking it into his speech and delivering it across to the audience. And I know when we were just talking behind the scenes with the team, they were urging me today that on this second day, we need to ensure that each and every person who steps out of this particular room tends to affirm that and remember that this year's Kenya Investment Mechanism Learning Event theme was access and impact. So can I hear just the room say again, access and impact? But I'm only hearing Roger's voice. Can I hear from behind somebody saying access and impact? All right, thank you very much, much appreciated. So remember again, participant, if at all you have any of your friends who wanted to be present here today and wasn't able to, we are streaming this live on that's USAID Kenya Investment Mechanism Facebook page and also USAID Kenya Investment Mechanism YouTube page. The conversation also is going up on the respective social media platforms under the hashtag USAID KIM Learning Event and hashtag to invest in Kenya Talk to Us. I know probably for a fact there could be somebody plugging in today who hasn't just had a quick grasp of what USAID Kenya Investment Mechanism is all about. So probably just take a few 1 minute or so to just do 2 quick or 3 lines to affirm what USAID Kenya Investment Mechanism is all about, all right? Kenya Investment Mechanism is a 5-year USAID program that is facilitating 520 million US dollars in investment for key sectors of Kenya's economy. And Kenya Investment Mechanism addresses 2 principal market failures that have discouraged investors from financing micro, small, and medium enterprises within the Kenyan economy. And I just started up by indicating that this year's learning event was themed across access and impact. And just taking you through what happened yesterday, this is actually KIM's year 4 of implementation. Definitely they're getting into year 5 of implementation. And this particular event was just to converge us to decipher and plug off lessons that have emerged across the past 1 year, 2-year, 3-year, and 4th year of implementation of the USAID Kenya Investment Mechanism Program. And that just takes me up in terms of recapping what happened yesterday. And I hope this can be meaningful to any person just getting in. So we had kickoff remarks that were done yesterday by the USAID Kenya Investment Mechanism Chief of Party, Roger Bad, who reiterated the excitement of Kim hosting this particular event. And after that, we went into 3 panel sessions, yes, that emerged yesterday. And the first one was centered around financial innovation, development, and uptake with experts from financial institutions. And that particular segment had Anthony Mbithi from Family Bank. It had Peter Ndirangu from Facts Africa. It also had Antona Wambua, who's a product development manager, product development consultant. It also had our very own Anne Mwenje, who is a financial institutions director at the USAID Kenya Investment Mechanism. And it also had David Njiru, who is the chief business officer from Juhudi Kilimo. Later on in mid-morning, we also looked at a session that was centered around fostering information technology-enabled transformative products with C-suite officers from innovative companies. And on that particular segment, for anyone who would be interested in just checking out what it was all about, we had Julio D'Souza from Stratlink Business Advisory Firm. We also had Julian Mish from Inspira Farms, and Juan Stefano, the Chief Executive Officer at iProcure. In the afternoon, we had a powerful session that was centered on conversations around how best can we keep on supporting women, women-driven enterprises. That session was called Women Economic Empowerment session. I've jumped a little bit. Initially, before we went into the we segment, we had David Osian, who was our chief guest officer, coming in, and he was introduced by our USAID mission representative, Mr. Kimani, right? I keep on finding it hard to bring that out with my mother tongue. Benson Kimithi, right? Let me take that again. Sorry if I've got it wrong. Yeah, Benson Kimithi is the one who brought in David Osian, who is CAS at the Ministry of Trade. I hope that triggers you enough to warm up yourself to expect plenty and plenty of more to come in today. But probably before we get into that, allow me to just link you up to a recap video in terms of what happened today. Tim, probably if you're ready, you could bring that clip up. All right, thank you very much, Tim, for bringing that up. Hey, people. So for today, I also want to urge you from the word go to, if you've never done a tweet, probably today is a chance for you to do a tweet, right? If you didn't retweet us yesterday, please go onto the USAID Twitter platform and just retweeting the conversations that happened yesterday. But then again, even if you'll feel like retweeting yesterday's conversation is not adequate enough, please start taking extracts in terms of, hey, do a screenshot of what the thematic area for this year's learning event is all about, access and impact. Give us as much retweets and ensure that we have this particular conversation within the respective digital assets that we will be using. And again, to just recap it, the hashtag is USAID Kim Learning Event and hashtag to invest in Kenya, talk to us. Of course, now we're getting into day 2, right? And day 2, of course, looking at how the program is, it's action-packed. There are plenty much of activities that we've lined up today, including, yesterday we had only one session in the afternoon. Today we have 2 action-packed sessions in the afternoon, one centered around financial institutions and how we can foster their collaboration while they are working with the business advisory services. And there's also one centered on fish dish, looking at the innovations and discussions around the aquaculture segment. And without probably much ado, allow me to also, if the QR code is up, probably for any person who also want to access the program, could you just have the QR code up for anyone to access it? Tim, is it up? Or all right, if it is for anyone who will want to leverage up on the QR code, you can scan it up to get what we have today. Great, we have it. Let me give them a minute for them to queue it. All right, so there it is. The QR code is up for anyone either within digitally or internally today who hasn't grasped the program. The QR code is up, so feel free to scan that and download it. Okay, so to get us started in terms of what to expect today, allow me to bring up the first session, or rather the first keynote for the day, which in a way will set pace and link us through onto what we'll be looking forward to discussing today. There's a session which is important, yeah, maybe not others that are not important, but I'm just putting emphasis into it. There's a session that will look at the business and enabling environment within our ecosystem. And it's just interesting enough that our first speaker for the day, her presentation links itself up to what we're going to have later on in the day. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to bring unto you Wangare Muika. Wangare Muika is also courtesy, is available here courtesy of KEPSA. And we ended up getting into Wangare's schedule after KEPSA recommended her to sit in for Carol Karaoke, the chief executive officer KEPSA, who was not able to be present today. A quick just description in terms of who Wangare is. Wangare has worked in public finance management for over 10 years. Wangare has worked in the public finance management for over 10 years. She has worked in senior positions in various countries for, among others. A quick one is some of the organizations she has worked with is the National Treasury in Kenya, the World Bank in Washington, D.C., with the Dalberg Global as an advisor. Another interesting one in her bio, which is also interesting, is she has undertaken several projects for USAID, DANIDA, DFID, and the Global Fund. And in the process also, she's played a key role in advising, in playing an advisory role on government projects. Ladies and gentlemen, I have this particular pleasure to bring onto you on stage Wangare for her keynote address. And after that, also please prep yourself for really an engagement session with her, because we are looking at doing an interactive Q&A. Wangare, please, the podium is yours. Thank you. Could we just encourage her as she comes up? Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. It's wonderful to be here and to see everybody here. As mentioned earlier, my name is Wangari Mwekia, and I am the CEO of Expertise Global Consulting, which is a public finance management advisory firm here in Kenya. Particularly what we do is we work with government to advise them on public finance management, including how to create policies and frameworks that allow the economy to grow, and how we can ensure that businesses in Kenya also have an enabling environment in which to thrive. So I was asked to speak today about the role of the state in supporting and facilitating growth and expansion in the private sector. And so my discussion today is mainly going to concentrate on those factors and my experience in the space in how government can provide the tools, the frameworks, the policies for the private sector to thrive. And I'll start with some reflections. I was thinking as I was writing this, my notes yesterday. Some years ago, I traveled to Colombia, which is in Latin America. Now, Colombia is a very beautiful country. Wonderful people, big tourism industry, and generally a good place, a very nice place to be. But Colombia, the thing about Colombia that resonated with me is that Colombia is one of the top producers of coffee in the world, right? So I'm here in Colombia, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I also come from Kenya. We're very strong in coffee production. I mean, we're not top in the world, but we're pretty much up there. And so I go to Colombia thinking that, what do Colombians have on us, really? I mean, they may be top producers, but, we have the highest quality coffee. When I get there, I mean, just being there, they have everybody knows about coffee in Colombia. You walk down the streets, you can even smell coffee in the air. You ask, from everybody from different walks of life, from the small SMEs to the big companies, they know everything about coffee, right? And of course I'm there, and I'm wondering, I had come to really show and prove that, even us, we have something to show, and it comes to coffee, but I couldn't really stand. I didn't have two legs, any leg to stand on, because I felt that even though we have, Kenya is known for its coffee production, or I felt it was known for coffee production, it really pales in comparison to Colombia. And I started to think, what are the processes in place, both from the private sector and from the state, that allow for this kind of national brand and identity when it comes to, one of the top exports of the country, right? And why don't we, as Kenyans, have the same? If I was to ask anybody here about coffee, unless maybe you're a coffee farmer, you may not have a lot to, I don't know, you may not have a lot to contribute. You may not be able to tell me about, the deep details about coffee. But if you go to places like Colombia, where they really invest in those things, they have a national pride and they have a core identity about that. And I think, when you think about Colombia, you think about how their narrative has changed, because you think, Colombia was known for a lot of negative things, the drugs and all of that was happening, but they've been able to change their narrative in that sense. Similar to Nigeria. Nigeria has also not been known, they've been known for their 401 scams, but these days they're known for their film industry and their music, and that really has been driven from the MSMEs, the MSMEs were the small music, film industries, nascent industries that have actually blown up and are taking over the world, right? So and while it started as small industry, and it started to grow, as it started to grow, the state did come in Nigeria to support the industry to grow and to thrive. And those are some of the examples that we need to some countries need to look at and think about how can we make that happen also for us here in Kenya. Another example I was thinking about as I was writing this speech was, I remember when I was small in school, we used to, I think it was the course on business education. I think it was business education. Let me not date myself, otherwise you guys will know how old I am. 844 student. And I remember learning that Kenya was the top producer of pyrethrum in the world. Our little nascent democracy, was actually a global powerhouse when it came to pyrethrum, producing over 90% of the pyrethrum in the world. Where are we today with pyrethrum? We're producing less than 2% of the global demand, right? So I start to think about those things and I say, what was the role of the state? Why did this industry decline? Why are we where we are? And a lot has to do with how the state supports industry, how the state actually enables the industry to thrive and to grow. So these stories come to mind, and I think of how I have 3 points that I want to make before I hand it back to Kevin for the next session. I think the one thing that I want to highlight is that businesses should be facilitated by government to reap in areas of comparative advantage. There was discussion yesterday about the agricultural sector. The agricultural sector is a great example, I think, when it comes to comparative advantage. Kenya has a large comparative advantage in that area. Agriculture has been a major contributor to the Kenyan economy, but the sector is plagued by inefficiencies, right? It has suffered from the ravages of climate change, poor rains, you name it, agriculture has been suffering. But there are global developments in agriculture and agribusiness that can potentially allow for the agricultural sector to leapfrog into the 21st century. You think about what has been done in the US, you think about desert states like Israel. They've been able to incorporate technology to think through, what the future of agriculture is and what the future of agribusiness is. And we can engage and learn from industries and different countries that are doing, big things in agriculture. So connecting and learning from other businesses globally can help Kenyan businesses leapfrog into the future of agriculture and agribusiness using latest technologies and infrastructure. I also link this to the example of M-Pesa, where I think one of the major successes or one of the main reasons that M-Pesa was also able to thrive or to be so successful in Kenya and in the region is that we were able to actually implement technologies let me put it like this. So for big countries like the US or the UK, they had already put in a lot of infrastructure and cabling and those types of things to support the telecommunications industry. Whereas in Kenya, it was not as large. So when it came time for development, for growing this industry, it was actually an advantage because we didn't have the big kind of huge investments that the big countries had. We were able to kind of leapfrog into the future and apply new technologies into the telecommunication sector, link it to banking, innovate around that, and push that forward for us to become now the global powerhouse. So that innovation that comes from business and the ability to kind of leapfrog use new technologies in sectors that have not been able to advance as fast as we would have liked can be looked at as an advantage. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a story of Mauritius that I think is instructive for us and for this section, for this topic today, and things that we can learn from this country. So, in the 1960s. The UK government was wondering about the economic future of Mauritius, which was one of its colonies. It's an island nation located about 2,000 kilometers off the southeast coast of Africa. So not sure what to do, the civil servants in the UK colonial office showed an unusual level of restraint, humility, and boldness, and they acknowledged that none of them had the credentials and knowledge to come up with the intellectually robust and relevant development plan for Mauritius. So they decided to assign the task to Professor James Mead, the chair of political economy at University of Cambridge, and a brilliant economist and a Nobel laureate winner. So Professor Mead was asked to think carefully about the possible growth strategy and macroeconomic options for Mauritius and to provide an appropriate set of recommendations. So Mead had no knowledge of the country, but he really devoted some serious time to this task. And it was a major island because it's a small island lost in the Indian Ocean back in the day, no natural resources, virtually no infrastructure, very low levels of human capital, savings, weak institutions, poor governments, you name it, Mauritius was suffering from it. So perhaps not surprisingly, Meade's assessment of the island's prospects was scathing and without appeal. So his assessment, he said Mauritius is small, isolated, rapid rate of contemporary population growth, extreme concentration on a single product, diversity of racial, religious, and linguistic groups within the population, so a lot of conflict. Basically inferred that the country was representative of a microcosm of economic problems of a large part of the developing world. And so he concluded that Mauritius was really a lost case. So essentially, when you fast forward to half a century later, while Mauritius is still struggling with some of its colonial legacies, it's arguably Africa's most successful economic development story. It's a high-income country, something that we don't have in sub-Saharan Africa. So the country overcame its poor initial conditions and constraints and turned obstacles into opportunities, and starting with the realization that the small size of its domestic economy meant that it had to develop a robust and effective strategy for industrialization and global trade. So how did it do this, right? A country that was essentially written off by most of the world leaders and economists. What they did is that they identified, with the support of the private sector, what are the areas of potential growth in the economy, yeah? And the private sector and industry came together and said, we have a comparative advantage when it comes to sugar, the sugar industry. So what did the government do? The government then invested in research and development, and they did an important thing. They went to the global, they went global and looked for countries that had particular expertise in the sugar industry. And they made a deal with them, and they said, with your expertise, can you come to Mauritius, invest in the country, build capacities, stay in the country for 20 to 30 years, and by the time you're leaving, what we want is that we want to have our people understanding the sugar industry, understanding how to grow it, and to become a global leader in this space. And that's exactly what happened. The government was able to provide concessions and favorable trade agreements with international industry. They came into Mauritius and blew up and grew the sugar industry. What did Mauritius do then? They became a powerhouse in the sugar industry, but they then decided to diversify further. And now they grew their financial sector. Financial services in Mauritius is one of the top in the world, right? So they were able to grow from one area of comparative advantage, identify a different area of comparative advantage, and basically enhance the economy to be a high-income economy, one of the only in Africa. So they would not have been able to do this without this kind of linkages or support between the state providing R&D opportunities, the state providing for linkages with international organizations and businesses that were in the sector, and providing also the infrastructure for the sugar industry to actually thrive and grow, and subsequently the financial sector. So the state is a really important enabler. The main role of government is provide that environment through which businesses, small and large, can grow. And while I'm talking about big industry, talking about the sugar industry and one of the pillars of the economy, this can also be replicated for MSMEs in terms of how you connect, how the government can facilitate connections between businesses within the same space across different economies. And that's exactly what we have with the Kenya investment mechanism here. So Mauritius GDP has grown faster, has grown really quickly. It was about $400 by over independence, and in 2018 it was about $13,000 per person. So that's pretty remarkable, I think, and I think it's instructive for us. So, story of Mauritius, illustrative of the ability of successful countries to articulate competitive and comparative advantages in some industries and work with government to ensure that they're able to reap the benefits from that. So, the second point I wanted to make was the government should provide for, we talked about enabling environment, and I want to reiterate that point. Whereas the first point was about comparative advantage, we're talking about creating an enabling environment. And I remember a few, maybe weeks or months ago, it was in the papers that, that a bill, an ICT practitioners bill, and I'm sure many of you remember this, was being passed. I see some smiles and some chuckles in the audience. And this bill purported to identify or describe or provide criteria on what an ICT or who an ICT practitioner was, right? So they said, their ICT practitioner have to have a degree or years of experience. They have to pay a certain fee to be part of the ICT practitioners, organization or something like that. Well, that shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what the sector is, right? So ICT is a dynamic space, a lot of young people who don't necessarily have the degrees or the certificates when it comes to ICT, but these are people who work in ICT day in, day out and are coming up with innovations and ideas for the sector. And so for the government to come in and essentially try to straitjacket the ICT practitioners into these kind of categories really was a disservice to the country. And it's an example of what government should not do in these spaces. Government is there to provide an enabling environment. It's also there to help regulate when things are not, when you have negative externalities, which is essentially markets or businesses that are harming the environment or harming people. But it should not be there to straitjacket an industry into, to straitjacket the industry and not allow it to grow in the way it should. So, sometimes government does engage in policy. Sometimes we have protectionist measures. We see that in many countries where the government puts taxes or fees and to protect local industry. And in some cases, it can be good in the short term to help businesses to evolve, but it shouldn't be a long-term strategy. So you see a lot of industries where you have protectionist taxes, you have subsidies being provided to the local industry, and while that might look good locally, it actually is a disservice to the industry because ideally would like the industry to respond to the market and to evolve. Certain aspects of the industry should die off while others grow. And so the role of government is actually to support that and to provide reforms to enable the industries to evolve and grow. And so, the third and final point I wanted to make was that government should also support diversification and also fortify the local industry. So we have not been saved from global volatility. What's happening in Ukraine and Russia has started to affect us. We don't have direct trade with some of these countries, but indirectly we've started to feel the effects. And we're seeing now the effects on the economy. Inflation is going high, price of fuel is high, and fertilizer is also quite high. But it is important to think through how locally, while we do have key pillar industries, how we then can also diversify, much like Mauritius did. They diversified from sugarcane and went to financial services. How can we support MSMEs and big industries to diversify, but also to ensure that the local industries are stronger? And there's a big role for government here to ensure that we are harnessing that potential, and making sure that we realize it. I think one of the things I can think about, especially in the day-to-day, is the energy sector and our potential in geothermal. And how we can ensure that we are harvesting that kind of potential that would then make sure that we are shielded from a lot of the global vagaries that are happening. So this may mean developing strong ties with other global industries, each working in their niche space within that industry, and each to grow and evolve within its industry going forward. So to close, government's primary role is as an enabler to support research and development, to ensure that the support infrastructure is in place for big business and MSMEs, and to ensure where the market forces create negative externalities to mitigate against them. Global trade allows us to specialize, but also provides us opportunities to work with the global business community to get the best goods and services for our nations. Thank you very much. Over to you, Kevin. Or to you.
Thank you very much, Wangari. That was really, inciting. Guys, I think we've been able to understand the perspective of the private sector in the investment landscape of Kenya, and it's very clear that the private sector is very vibrant, and it has several entrepreneurial benefits in participating in Kenya's financial ecosystem. So I think three things that come out very clearly from your keynote address at the moment is that the state has a very critical role to play when it comes to supporting research, supporting the participation of key stakeholders in Kenya's financial ecosystem. And the fact that they need to be creating a very comprehensive and inclusive ecosystem as well is very meaningful towards the journey of investment. Secondly is in terms of infrastructure that is used to enable the participation of SMEs and as well as private sector stakeholders, different stakeholders at the same time. That's very useful in this field. Again, there's the issue of connecting and learning from other businesses. The various examples that you've been able to bring out show that it's very important for people to look into success stories and try and match them up at some point, because sometimes they do inform progressive realization in the sector. So at this juncture, Wangari is still around, right, Wangari? I believe he's still around. So anybody who would like to engage with the private sector entirely and get to engage more, I think you can perhaps meet Wangari and engage with her. We may need to move to the next segment following the time duration at the moment, unless Wangari, you want to take one question from the audience?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well from here. I think it's the echo on the stage.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I can't hear there's an echo that I can't hear the words. Could you please repeat what you said?
All right, so I'm asking, are you open to one question from the audience?
Yes. Oh. I would love to get questions from you. Thank you.
I hope you can hear me. Okay, all right.
Hello, and thank you. My name is Gideon, and 2014 I founded a company. My name is Gideon, and since 2014 I founded a company known as Finesse Foods to provide alternative to the food, and particularly I focused on jackfruits. And I spent so much time and money. I would work and plow money back to research and develop on different products from jackfruits. As you say, the government is not supporting us enough, and again, we lack information for that. Is there, and if you go to financial institutions, they don't fund research and development. And again, you're supposed to have a fully researched and developed product for people to consume in the market. For instance, you need to go to CAPES, you need to, again, to present the nutritional facts on the products that you have developed. Up to date, when I sell, I usually sell off the market, and the information I give to people I actually rely on USAID database, which is, to me, something I haven't experienced, but I have to go to the standards that are available on the internet. I would like to know, is there a place now I can maybe go to and get maybe that experiment and have the factual representation of research? Thank you.
Wangari, have you been able to get that? Or let me just rephrase it really quick. For his experience as an individual in the business market, is there perhaps a place where he can get the requisite information to help him grow in the process, and perhaps a database that could ensure that he has the requisite information to ensure that he participates in the ecosystem as required?
I'm sorry, what industry? To get information for which industry?
Food processing, where
Food processing.
someone can research and develop fully on the products.
Any other questions or comments?
I think we may not have that much time for another. However, Wangari, I'm hoping you can take that question for now, and then we can open up the segment for questions a bit later when you're around with everybody. Is that okay? Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that question. And I think it is one that many players, I think, in the MSMEs struggle with, in terms of finding places where they can get access to information, access to different resources and tools through which that can support their work. I think for different industries, there are different places that you can get that information. I think from the CAS, the Chief Administrative Secretary from Trade yesterday, and in different forums has talked about they're creating some facilities or access points where they can provide information for different sectors through which different players would be able to use to enhance their whatever industry that they're in. There's also chambers of commerce that provide this kind of information, and also places like Kenya Association of Manufacturers and KEPSA also provide this kind of information. So I think linking with these institutions would really be able to support you get further. Also, organizations or within your industry where different players actually come together and discuss, your industry, I think, would be also a good place to start or to pick up from. And I think those are some of the different areas that you could access. I hope I answered your question. I wasn't able to hear you very well, but I hope I answered your question. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much, Wangari, for that. I think we can give her a round of applause, everybody. So at this point, for anyone who still wants to engage Wangari, please, guys, she's still in the room. Make sure you're able to interact with her on all those things, right? Definitely. Guys, are we going to give her a standing ovation? Yeah, let's do that. I think that's even better. All right. Okay. All right, great. So now we shall welcome to the stage KIEM's Chief of Party, Mr. Roger Bard, to help me introduce our next speaker, who will be shedding a lot of light on leveraging incentive fees model for governments to do business with the private sector. Karibu sana, Roger. You can take it away. Guys, I'm waiting for the claps and I can't hear them.
I can be here. Great, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Wangari, thank you very much for those words, and I really appreciate the real connection that you are drawing between whether it be county or national governments, recognizing what their strengths are and also recognizing what their weaknesses are and reaching out to others to be able to fulfill or strengthen that weakness and to be able to generate economic activity as a result of that. We see that going on in the counties, definitely as they try to find ways to unlock capital. And so the prelude of Wangari's talk is very relevant to our next guest as well. And I have really the great pleasure of inviting our next speaker, Mr. Tendai Mtana, thank you. He is the County Executive Committee member for Agriculture in Mombasa, where the motto in Mombasa is, Mombasa means business. I always like that, Tendai. Tendai has been involved in subnational public sector collaborations for the last 20 years. His vision for Africa is anchored in affirming lives, enabling ability, and facilitating positive partnerships within and across local communities. He is the founder of the Kilindini Initiative and chair of the Kaya Advisory Board. As the founding trustee of the Foundation for Law and Governance, and a trust that seeks to raise leaders across Africa, Tendai sits on a number of boards as an adaptive leader and public policy advisor. It is my great pleasure to invite my friend and colleague, Waziri Tendai.
Thank you very much, Roger. It's an honor and a privilege to be up here on stage. When I was asked to make this presentation, Roger, I opted to do one very simple, cheeky thing. I asked my 11-year-old son what I should wear up on stage today. And he said, "Dad, be cool. You're constantly too uptight, and you need to have fun." But then I remembered something else, and this was said yesterday. There's a way government has been experienced over the years. And there's a phrase that has come and is synonymous with government, and for those of you who are not Kiswahili speakers, you'll forgive me or someone next to you will interpret what I'm about to say. And the phrase that is usually used is, "Serikali saidia." So I decided to put together my son's advice, the need to loosen up a little bit morning, and to actually be in, what do they call it? I actually decided to dress the part. So I decided that I'm actually going to be a superhero. And that's why I'm actually here today as an Avenger, for those of you who know Marvel Comics. So we usually dress like this at work. Benton will. So we've been branded as superheroes in this country. In most places you go to, one of the things you'll constantly hear is government needs to help. Government needs to make room, and government needs to play its part. I'm not too sure whether government has been as successful in being an avenger. But one of the things that is evident today, and we'll talk about this in a minute, and I think Wangari has done a brilliant job at setting the context, is that we've actually been able to at least at the county level, begin to tell our story. So let me tell my story first so that you know who's up here. I was born out of a small village in Kilifi. Those of you who come from the coast may have passed this city once, or this little town which is now growing into a really peri-urban area, a small town called Titsoni. I was born of a Mijikenda father and a half Zulu, half Shona mother. And I know I don't look the part, like I look like a village boy, but I did actually grow up in the village. My grandfather, whom I'm named after, had one singular goal in life, and he was a farmer. Well, at least I think he was. But he was definitely in the agribusiness sector. My grandfather was a wine tapper. In Kiswahili twaita wagema. And one of the things that my grandfather did was that my grandfather traversed the entire, what is now county of Kilifi, and found his way into the county of Mombasa. And what my grandfather would do, my grandfather would climb coconut trees. He climbed tall ones, fat ones, thin ones, small ones, to try and get to the top of the coconut tree to be able to actually tap the palm wine. And he did this with one singular goal. His singular goal was that his son and all his children would have an opportunity to go to school and would have an opportunity to take their children to school. Today I stand here before you, born Tendai Lewa Mtana, as a manifestation of my grandfather's dream. But there's a reason why I'm telling you this in the context of an enabling environment. My journey through school wasn't as simple and straightforward. And today, 20 years after having been in government and been at the local government level, I'm grateful that my grandfather had that dream, in spite of how difficult it was for me to get through school. The point that I'm making can't be better demonstrated than an occurrence that's actually taking place in the United Kingdom. I was privileged enough to get a scholarship to go to the University of Reading, and today, Reading boasts one of the candidates for the British Prime Minister position in the coming Conservative Party elections. Now, while that may just be a statement, it isn't when it comes to the point that I'm making. Penny Mordaunt was in school with me. And one of the things that it showed me when I saw that Penny is in the running for Prime Minister for the United Kingdom, I realized that two things are possible in this country. That it's possible for the grandson of a wine tapper to get through school and sit with potential kings and prime ministers of this continent. Now, why is that important in an enabling environment, and why is it needful for me to explain? Well, it's needful because when we think about public service, very often, public service doesn't dress like this. Very often, public service is expected to behave kind of like this, with a coat hanging on a seat and an occupant absent. Many of you who've experienced public service have stereotyped us that way. And yet that's not true. Public service has diligent individuals who work hard at making it possible for government to create an enabling environment. But one of the things that we very often don't and I want to just put up a slide. I coined a phrase a couple of years back, and the phrase that I coined was utendaji. And utendaji simply describes what it takes for diligent governance to take place in our communities. But what does that actually mean? Roger and I keep having animated debates about how difficult it is to get things moving in counties. One of the things that we are diligently working at now is we're all preparing for a general election in a number of weeks. And very often when we get to this place and we get to this stage, it almost seems like everything comes to a standstill. And private sector almost puts everything on pause until after the elections. And the question has always been, is that really necessary? Is that really necessary when, technically speaking, what we simply have are the heads of our institutions running for office, and yet what we have is program directors, whether at county level or undersecretaries at national level, still present and at work every day. And so the question is, and we've got to be able to ask ourselves, is it possible for us to challenge government and for government to be responsive enough for us to be able to keep the space and the enabling environment working? That's a question that needs to be answered. It's a question that we need to challenge ourselves as government, because essentially government never closes. Government never shuts down. And so a fundamental part of our enabling environment has got to be that in spite of the fact that we're having an election, well, guess what? Stuff has to go on. And businesses don't know that an election is happening in spite of the fact that it's happening. But on election day, guess what's going to happen? The boda guy is still going to be on the road. The Uber guy is still going to be on the road. Agents are going to have to be fed, which means restaurants, canteens, mamantiliers are going to have to still be working. And that's private sector. And so what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to create a culture where government continues to work irrespective of political ups and downs. But that's a challenge for all of us to have, because it's a behavior of our citizenship that somehow takes the system so personally. You'd think that we're all running for office. My point here is this. If we're truly going to create an enabling environment, then point number one is citizen and business are going to have to be a coalition that works. We're going to have to demystify the idea that government is, and particularly, a political environment entirely. That can't be the case. And it certainly can't be the case always. And so one of the things that we've challenged ourselves to do, particularly at the subnational level, is to figure out how and can we ensure that for you as enterprise, for you as developing partners, and for ourselves, ensure that what we actually have is a government that works. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you a side of our country that I think many of us hardly pay attention to. There's two maps that I'd like to show you on the screen. I call these maps our blue savanna. These two maps essentially map out what we've defaulted in this country and have called our arid and semi-arid lands. These lands make up almost 75% of our arable land and cover the entire marine spatial plan of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, the tiny part of the map on the left is what I call the White Highland counties. Our food system in this country has primarily been reliant on those White Highland counties. One of the things that we've not been able to do, and I'm glad to be a part of county government, is that 29 of our counties are caught up in what I call the Blue Savannah, or make up what I call the Blue Savannah. And these 29 counties have an enabling environment, have enterprise, have space, have dreams that seek to ensure that not only do enterprise in these areas thrive, but these enterprise have possibly some of the most valuable natural resources that we've seen in this country and globally. One of the most important parts of this map is that it also disrupts a key factor of why the business advisory framework and the results mechanism that Kenya Investment Mechanism is seeking to achieve is critical. Kenya for too long, and I'm glad Wangari touched on it, but she glossed over it. Kenya for too long has been a consumer of price taking. One of the things that an enabling environment, particularly in these 29 counties, needs to be able to establish is Kenya must become a price determiner of its own natural resources. To do that, we're going to have to tell our own story, and we're going to have to demystify a number of the negotiations that take place at a global level. And that's why I started off by making the point about why, for my story, my education is particularly important in this day, where I happen to have an opportunity to influence an alumni to be able to determine what natural resource products on a global market look like. What that looks like is positioning not just governors, but positioning speakers of the county assembly to be able to negotiate outcomes of our natural resources at global levels. That's an enabling environment both locally, regionally, and globally. But to do that, ladies and gentlemen, there's a way we're going to have to reframe who we are. There's a way in which we're going to have to begin to tell our own story. There's a way in which we're going to have to dig deeper and understand why government does what it does. I'm not sure if Wangari has left the room, but as I conclude, I want to give an example of the very piece of legislation that she spoke about. Unknown to many of you, this country suffers what I call, at the county level, and perhaps even at a national level, executive capture. Now, what that looks like in an enabling environment is we have a separation of powers in our constitutional makeup, which ensures that our legislative arm is responsible for the creation of laws that are an enabling environment and regulatory framework. As a student of politics and government, I smile and I laugh when I watch the executive, which I also sit within, have a challenge when the House of Representatives that we call our parliament and our county assemblies begin to create legislation and executives begin to push back. Essentially what I'm saying is, at 10 years of devolution, one of the things that I'm hoping, having been in this space for 20 years, is that as we pass the baton to the next generation of county leadership, is that we begin to see a check and balance where our legislative arms and our representatives begin to represent and create an enabling environment for business to grow. It can't be seen entirely as a responsibility of the executive. What we're going to have to do as Kenyans in the coming weeks is we're going to have to take a good look at who it is that we're electing as our representatives to ensure that what we actually have within our House of Parliaments across our 48 august houses create an enabling environment for a legal framework to establish. In Mombasa, we've come up with a framework that is called the Utangamano Bay. And the Utangamano Bay is a makeup of 8 components. If they can just put it up on the screen, within which one of them is the pay for results framework that we're working on with the Kenya Investment Mechanism. This is essentially looking to establish a fund that will provide the incentives that are required for business advisors to thrive. Yesterday we had animated conversation and debate about what that really looks like. Ladies and gentlemen, until we recognize that the culture of enterprise requires an ecosystem in 29 spaces that are not traditionally what we would call business and thriving counties like Mombasa, those 29 counties that I call the Blue Savannah are going to need a cohort of business advisors that understand their environment. We're going to have to be able to ensure that we have business advisors that understand Marsabit, that understand Mandera, that understand Migori, that understand Kitui, that understand Makueni. Because a business advisor that understands the ecosystem of Nairobi may have an opportunity to create and provoke conversation there. But if there's anything that I've learned, and I like the question that was asked to Wangari earlier, a lot of these questions that are being asked by young people, by women, are going to have to be answered by their own residents that understand their own ecosystems. And so, alongside various other mechanisms, ladies and gentlemen, our story as Avengers at the county level in the next 5 years is going to have to be one that chooses to break the various biases that we have. We're going to have to think of ourselves differently. We're going to have to make sure that for the people that we work with on a day-to-day basis, that we are front and center and serving their interests. We're going to have to make sure that what we do is look our citizens in the face, ensure that we turn up for them, and dignify their lives. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Asante sana. Thank you for those great remarks. By the way, sir, you've just brought in your presentation a conversation that we'll be having in the afternoon centered on how BASPs and FIs can keep on working together, and the context in which Thande has brought out around a BASP in Nairobi, understanding what the SME needs in Nairobi is, a BASP in Kisumu, understanding what an SME need in Kisumu is. That's really an interesting perspective right there, and actually it links to the session around the BASPs and forging sustainable partnerships between the BASPs and the FIs, a session that will be coming in the afternoon. So that was a great one. Without really much further ado, I know the stage is being set up, but it's with our pleasure to just link you up onto the conversation, or rather presentation that will come in next from the National Treasury Credit Guarantee Program presentation. And I would like to introduce the keynote speech person who, his name is Ronald, Deputy Director, Financial and Secretarial Affairs at the National Treasury. He works closely with the financial sector regulators in Kenya towards the achievement of financial access and inclusion, efficiency, and stability. He has extensive experience in public service which spans over 24 years. He has previously worked for the Ministry of East African Community, the Ministry of Trade and Commerce, and the Ministry of Education. His current assignments include overseeing a number of programs and projects in the financial sector division. One such project is the establishment of the Credit Guarantee Scheme in Kenya. He holds a Bachelor of Education in Mathematics and Economics, as well as an MBA and a second Master's in International Development Studies. Mr. Ronald Ngala, that's a great introduction for you. Please, the stage is yours. Take it up, sir.
Thank you so much. I must begin by appreciating USAID Kenya and the Kenya Investment Mechanism for the support they have continued to give to the National Treasury towards implementing various programs, including the Credit Guarantee Scheme. Thank you, Benson. Thank you, Roger Bad. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Bernard. I also want to recognize my colleague, Sila Modoga. Where are you? Can you stand up? Thank you. So I'm here to share with you the journey that we are on in terms of the Kenya Credit Guarantee Scheme for micro, small, and medium enterprises. And as you've been told, I am the current interim scheme manager, I think way from around 2020. So do we have a vision is the question I want to address. Our vision at the Credit Guarantee Scheme is to be a world-class credit guarantor for the growth of MSMEs. And we seek to enhance access to finance. And I'm happy the theme of this learning event is access and impact. So we seek to enhance access to finance through innovation and partnership and provision of guarantees. I will share with you three things. Number one is an overview of what we are doing currently. The second one is what are the gaps and opportunities. And lastly, I will share with you what do we think are the necessary actions. I also note my colleagues have been here, colleague from the county government. I like the way he put a quote here and said that we've been thinking that government officers do like that. I want to confirm to you the team that we work with, we have no time to put quotes and the work is too much. So then, under the current, we have the establishment, then we have how do you access, settlement of claims, and then performance. Where are we in terms of performance? So under this, we are talking about establishment. So who is eligible for this guarantee product? And I am sure some MSMEs are listening to me, including the one who raised a question, so that we are able to clarify what we are doing. You need to be a registered MSME, registered. And this issue of registration is what we are discussing and seeing how do we support. You need to be tax compliant. You need to have a valid business permit. You need to be credit worthy. You need to borrow for business purposes. And this is anchored in the law, the PFM Act, which is the legislative framework. What is the product? It is a risk-sharing arrangement whereby the government covers a maximum of 25%. And this means that when you go to the bank, you are able to access credit. You can get a maximum of 5 million Kenya shillings and 36 months for your tenor. And of course, you can also have a moratorium of 5 months. Who are the banks that are participating? We have 7 banks that are participating in the scheme. We have an agreement with these banks. The administration is housed at the National Treasury. We have an oversight body chaired by the PS National Treasury, and the Central Bank of Kenya sits on this board, Attorney General sits on this board, and the State Department of Industrialization. I am happy yesterday you had a conversation with the CAS. They are part of this board. How do you access? How does an MSME access? Very important for us. A qualifying MSME will approach the 7 PFI that are a part of this. And I know you are asking, which are these 7? The 7 are Kenya Commercial Bank, Cooperative Bank, Stanbic, ABSA, Diamond Trust Bank, Credit Bank, and NCBA. I hope I've mentioned all of them. So you will approach that one of those ones. Your credit will be appraised in the normal way they appraise other credit, but using our criteria. Then they will register that with us on a monthly basis. I will be sharing with you data up to May. Then, of course, they will monitor the facility in the normal way, and they will have it repaid in the normal way. So that is how you access the credit. You will go to the PFI that I have mentioned. Where are we in terms of performance? Have we done anything on the market? Has the government done anything on the market? Is an important question to answer, and that is on the performance. And these are highlights as of May 2022. We are reviewing the report for June, and that will be coming out in a short while. As we speak today, we have 2,392 loans issued, 3.75 billion to our MSMEs. Already, thank you for clapping for us. Already, access is in 46 out of the 47 counties. Only one county has no beneficiary, and that is Mandera. We hope to do a few things and see what we can do. MSMEs in 11 sectors have accessed credit. 20% of the credit was to women, youth, and persons with disability. Our law requires us to go up to 30%, but that's where we are currently. What are the other performance indicators that we are looking at? Loan size ranges from 30,000 shillings, meaning this is truly the people at the bottom. The loan size that we have seen issued begin from 30,000 shillings, but we also have 5 million. But the average loan size is 1.56 million, averagely across those borrowers. Interest rates have ranged between 9% and 17%, averaging at 13.3%. We have seen a few of our commercial banks issuing facilities under this scheme at a lower rate compared to the other facilities they have issued under the same, which is a big additionality on the market. Thank you, Roger Bad, for clapping for us. Asante sana. Loan tenor, it's between 1 to 36 months, averaging 26 months. And then, of course, we have micro, small, and medium enterprises all accessing at 24% for micro, and for 24%, and then 61% for small, and 15% for medium. How are the sectors performing? Trade sector still remains very high. And I'm happy that there's a conversation around agriculture. We would like to have this conversation advanced, including manufacturing, because you can see trade is doing 76%, while the other sectors are way below 10%. We have transport, we have building and construction, of course, personal household manufacturing, and tourism. As of today, 239 facilities have been fully repaid, releasing the guarantee facility for reallocation. What that means that those people borrowed money and they were able to repay back. That means the facility is available for the next borrower. That is the uniqueness of the guarantee product, because you release credit to the borrower, they repay back, another one gets the same. The fully repaid facilities amount to 389 million, meaning that that money is available as a guarantee. As at 31st May, utilization of guarantees was at 35%. Now, we also look at the performance of the portfolio. 96 of the facilities are classified as normal, in line with the prudential guidelines of Central Bank of Kenya for the last 1.5 years. Thank you for clapping for us, Bwana Roger. Yes, thank you, son. What have we done about stakeholder engagement? We have been engaging various stakeholders, including individual MSMEs, organizations, to increase awareness. We have had meetings with participating financial intermediaries. Our recent one, we put together all the CEOs and the banks, and they were we really had a conversation. We are engaging development partners. World Bank is interested in what we are doing, FSD, USAID, and we must give a clap to USAID for their support to us. Thank you so much for your continued support. EFund, KFW, on potential partnership and support. We have also engaged the academia. We are not worried about research. So Nairobi University has been engaging on how to improve this uptake among women. We have also had MDS, the ministries, departments, and government agencies to get potential areas of synergy. Are there gaps and opportunities? Yes, there are. Number one, utilization, sustainability, data quality, and then informality, capacity constraints. What about utilization? We are at 35%, but with a huge potential of growing this to a bigger portfolio, even over 100%. Another one, concentration in beneficiaries in trade sector. Combined allocation for agriculture and manufacturing is below 5%. We are asking ourselves, where are our farmers? Where are those who are going to manufacture for us? Allocation to women, youth, and persons with disability is 20% below the 30% requirement. Number two, sustainability of the current CGS design. Number one, dependent on CGS, on the exchequer. Then we are not charging a guarantee fee, but this conversation has begun. All guarantees globally charge a guarantee fee, and we hope to do that not long from now. Guarantee fund not earning interest. Decision making takes long within the bureaucratic framework of Treasury sometimes. What is the other thing? Data quality and reporting challenges. PFI returns sometimes are incomplete. They contain blanks, and they have inconsistent entries. Data format not amenable to the system. Restrictive definition of sectors. This is important for us. The way we have defined our sectors in the economy is restrictive, so that a guy doing agro-processing, an agrovet, is classified as a trader. So then that becomes a little bit difficult to be sure that we are saying the same thing. There are potential overlaps in definition of micro, small, and medium enterprises. Then CGS reporting timelines sometimes affected. And then, of course, challenges in managing guarantees that are overdrafts. The other big elephant in the room is the informality. Most of our MSMEs are informal. Then capacity, limited staff who have overlapping duties. Truly, they have overlapping duties. CGS data procedures require dedicated office space. Those are some of the things need to learn from global leaders in doing what we are doing. What are the necessary actions as I almost come to a conclusion? Number one, we propose that we need to establish an independent legal entity, which is the Kenya Credit Guarantee Company. We propose to onboard additional PFIs. We propose to diversify the guarantee portfolio. We propose that we have an integrated data reporting framework. At the click of a button from the PFI, that data should hit our bottom. We need to streamline classification of sectors. These are bold proposals, sometimes very difficult to push through in government, but we are making them because we believe they are the right things to do. Independent legal entities supervised by CPK focused on impact and sustainability of efficiency of the scheme. We need to have that. We can consider guarantees of high impact, such as climate change mitigation and investment. Mandate to mobilize capital resources from other partners and private sector. What is the workflow? How do you get there? We need to amend the PFM Act and the CBK Act. And this one we are taking it boldly. Develop appropriate regulation for the Great Guarantee. Mobilize initial shareholding from the government and then from other. And then, of course, have a board. What is the other thing we need to do? We need to onboard additional PFIs, and we think we shall begin to do such work maybe in September. We have the process underway, and the banks will be invited to apply. Diversification is another thing we are looking at. We need to develop a varied guarantees product to improve uptake, like special products for agriculture, for women, for people with disability, with different probably coverage ratios. This will involve varying a number of things. And then interested partners can use KCG to implement credit guarantee product focused on sectors. And then this will also complement the utilization and grow the product. Requires a flexible and accountable CG framework benchmarked against global best practices. This is another bold proposal we are making. We know it is not easy, but we are making the proposal. We propose integration of data and reporting systems, where at the click of a button there is real-time data and resolution of errors, minimize human errors, enhance data security, and enhance efficiency. So this is one of the proposals we are making, and we will continue to canvass it. What are we proposing about classification? This one we are already taking it up. We are proposing to enhance that. We will need to deal with the reporting of by the sectors, and that we are working with CBK, a reporting template that segregates the data. And in case of the MSME, micro, small, and medium enterprises, the law is with the Ministry of Industry, but in the meantime, what do we propose? That in case of a conflict between the number of employees and turnover prevails so that we can be able to get more accurate data. What problem are we solving? The problem is this. What the law anticipates is that an MSME has to meet the three criteria in terms of turnover, number of employees, and asset base. Now that's a problem because you can have fewer employees but you have a bigger turnover. So that's the problem we want to resolve, and we will be making a proposal to the CS to be able to guide us. Thank you very much. Asante sana. I think I am done with my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ronald, for acquainting the room with the National Treasury Credit Guarantee Program. Guys, let's give it up for our three speakers who have been able to tell us a lot about different sectoral performances and all these things. I think now we shall be transitioning into our health break. For now, we shall be going outside for the health break. I'm hoping that we can all grab our tea and come back in the room. We need to start the next session in a few. That is about 11:10 a.m. So maybe we can start taking this break right now. Once it gets to 11:10 and you're not able to complete your tea from outside, please feel free to come back with it inside the room. The next panel discussion will be about policy transformation. And Kevin, I think you'll be taking it from there once we're back into the room. Right?